Okay.
All right, now, we are talking today with Peter Goodspeed. Now, is your full name Harrison Peter Goodspeed, or?
Harrison is my real name. Peter is just a nickname.
All right. Of Cascade, Michigan. The interviewer today is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. All right, well, Mr. Goodspeed, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about your background? You know, where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Well, I was born right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Blodgett Hospital, and went to school, East Grand Rapids High School, or grade school, excuse me. Then prep school was out in Massachusetts. I went there for 4 years.
Which school did you go to?
It was called Berkshire.
Okay.
Berkshire School. And after that, I graduated in 42, and the war, of course, was going full bore by that time.
When you were in prep school, were you paying any attention to the events of the world, either before or after Pearl Harbor?
After Pearl Harbor, when we were told that we were bombed at Pearl Harbor,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think any of us knew where Pearl Harbor was.
Mm-hmm.
If they said Hawaii, we would have understood. So once we found out what it was, we got very concerned, and that was in my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went to Dartmouth for 1 semester and came home for Christmas vacation. And at that point, it was a case of being inducted or going in one way or another. There was no way to get out of it. And I decided to volunteer for induction, which is a form of enlistment.
Right.
Hoping to get what I wanted. Well, I got the infantry.
What did you want originally?
I didn't want the infantry because that's where everybody's getting shot at.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what they gave me, and I'm sort of glad that I looked past on it that I was able to be in the infantry. We saw the war firsthand.
Certainly did.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process once you decided that you were going to enlist? What did you do, or what steps did you have to take to get into the Army?
Well, my parents took me down to the, I guess it's the enlistment center or whatever it is, and got on the bus and went to Battle Creek,
Mm-hmm.
where we were given our uniforms and all that. And then we went to Camp Robinson, Arkansas, for basic training.
Okay. Did you spend any time in Battle Creek? Was it Fort Custer you went to?
Fort Custer, exactly.
And they just immediately shipped you out, or did you?
I would say within a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Basic training was in, as I say, in Fort Arkansas.
What do you remember anything about the trip down to Arkansas? Just as an experience?
It was a troop train, but it's so far back that wasn't too much. There were other troop trains I took I remember quite well.
Okay. Well, you can take us down to the camp in Arkansas. What was that like?
That was for Camp Robinson. That was a typical GI camp with Quonset huts and then training grounds, and they taught us quite well. And they almost accepted me for officer candidate school down there until they found out that they had enough officers at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So they switched me all the way out to Camp Carson, Colorado, for desert training, and that was rough. That training was real rough because it was hot, very hot and dry, and we were forced to go through combat conditions.
Right. What time of year were you out there?
All the summer of 1944. Excuse me.
43?
No, 43.
Yeah.
Summer of 43. And then after that, I signed up and was accepted to go to ASTP, it's Army Specialized Training Program, where you go back to college.
Right.
And I went up to of all places, University of South Dakota. And I was being trained as an engineer. They just had engineer and medical.
Mm-hmm.
And after a period of time while I was there, the Army decided they had enough engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So they cut that school out entirely. They kept the medical school.
Mm-hmm.
So I was back in the infantry, and they sent me down, by this time, down to camp that was in Missouri. Let's see, I can't think of it right now. We were there a very short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was informed then that I was accepted for officer candidate school. And so they sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I told my future bride that if I graduated from OCS, I'll be guaranteed 3 months here in the States, so why don't we plan on getting married?
Mm-hmm.
So we went ahead with those plans, and I did graduate from OCS as a second lieutenant, and was told to report for overseas. I asked him, now wait a minute, you can't do that when right here it says you're supposed to serve 3 months in training. And the sergeant I would talk to said, look, Lieutenant, he says it's unless otherwise authorized by the War Department. So our honeymoon was from Fort Benning, Georgia to Grand Rapids, where we got married, and then to Boston, Massachusetts, where we got on the boat and went overseas.
Before you joined the Army, how much of the country had you seen? I guess you've made it from Grand Rapids out to Boston or out to Massachusetts before.
Yeah, I've been there, and then I've gone out to California
Mm-hmm.
a couple of times.
What did your father do for a living?
Dad was in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
commercial real estate. He had office buildings and that sort of thing.
So he was doing relatively well in the 30s, all things considered?
Yeah,
Okay.
not too bad. One of the properties he acquired was a bowling alley. And suddenly we discovered we were going to be in the bowling business,
Mm-hmm.
among other things. Yeah, that bowling alley is still here in existence. It's over here at Eastbrook Lanes
Okay, that's still there, all right.
place. Yeah. Although my brother and I, who ran it, and
Mm-hmm.
owned it and ran it, have long since retired. So.
It's a little bit of a sidetrack, but it was an interesting one.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about the training. You said the training you got down in Arkansas was good training. What kind of people did you have as instructors at that point?
Well, I say mostly sergeants and officers, lieutenants. The best training I got was at OCS.
Mm-hmm.
They were real professional in this area. They taught us everything about the infantry and the army and all things about it.
Did you have instructors who were themselves combat veterans, or most of
Yeah,
them?
I think so. Yeah, I'm sure there were definitely one or two. I did not get into combat until, of course, we got over to Europe.
Right. It's the sort of thing of whether you're being taught by people who've actually been there and done it in the current war or the First World War, or
Well, they're all the Second War veterans,
mm-hmm.
and I would say the majority of them had been in combat.
Mm-hmm.
But they were also good trainers too.
Okay. What separated the training you got at Officer Candidate School from what you got in Colorado or Missouri or elsewhere?
Well, it went much more into detail. Normally, this kind of officer candidate school has men become officers in 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Used to call them a 90-day wonder.
Right.
But because when I was in officer candidate school, things got really hot in Europe. Things
Mm-hmm.
were really getting. We had D-Day had come and gone, and there was a lot of fighting, so they needed us real quickly. So they changed it from 90 days to 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a 60-day wonder. I got out as second lieutenant.
Okay. But what kind of skills or whatever were they trying to train you in at that level that they didn't otherwise?
Well, a lot of it was leadership, but not only basic infantry and how to act in wartime and,
Mm-hmm.
and enemy fire and all that, but a lot of it is to teach us how to train others,
Mm-hmm.
what these various other corps were doing, like Quartermaster Corps and the Artillery Corps, and
Right.
what were their functions during the war,
Mm-hmm.
and that we were all taught that. But it was very fast and furious.
All right. So now we've gotten you as far as Boston, and you're ready to ship out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember roughly when that was?
Was it January the 1st, 1944.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. My father came out and joined my wife and myself to see us off, see
Mm-hmm.
me off on the boat. So, and also he could help her drive the car back to Grand Rapids. I was on a boat for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This was much longer than you would normally take to cross the ocean on a boat. And the reason why is that because there's a threat of U-boats all the
Right.
time. And they had us zigzagging, constantly zigzagging.
Did your ship go by itself, or were you in convoy?
Convoy.
Okay.
Convoy.
What did you get to see much of what the convoy looked like, or how they did things?
Yeah, once in a while you get up on deck and it was with a clear day, you could see a boat here and
Mhm.
a boat over there. But of course, they were beyond the horizon too.
Right.
We knew that they were there. At one time, officers were at a meeting down below, and the boat, when an explosion hit the boat, scared the hell out of us. And they said, "Okay, go back and tell your men not to be worried. This is a bomb that we dropped.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something like a torpedo from the enemy.
Right.
It was a bomb that we dropped because we thought a U-boat was nearby.
Right.
But I tell you, I had a lot of job to calm the men down
Mm-hmm.
in my company because they didn't know what it was. They heard the explosion. It could be the whole boat going down.
Okay. You're talking about your company. At this point, have you been assigned to a regular unit, or are you simply going over as replacements at this point?
We're just going as a replacement.
So your company was sort of one that would be broken up and redistributed among
Yeah.
units when they got there?
Yeah, the company that was on the
Mhm.
boat. We got off at Le Havre, France, and took a train all the way across France,
Mhm.
and then I joined my company in Luxemburg that I was assigned to.
Right.
The company consisted of 12 men. Normally there's 180 of them.
Right.
They had just gone through the Battle of the Bulge,
Mm-hmm.
and they had, with being killed and wounded, there was only 12 guys left. And I was one of the replacements.
Now, about what date was this now when you joined them?
Oh, I would say it took us 2 weeks to get across, so that'd be January the 14th. I'd say the 15th or 16th.
Okay, okay, so kind of second half of January.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea basically where you were at that time? I mean,
We were in Luxembourg, near Belgium.
Okay,
Yeah. In fact, I think at one point we were in Belgium. Yeah.
because you're sort of then on sort of the southern end of what had been the Bulge
Yeah.
at that point.
Right.
And were you close to the German frontier at that point?
Yes, very close. In fact, after we got the company all set with all replacements and everything, we headed due east.
How large did the company become? Did they get it back to 180? Or?
Yes, they got up to 180.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they had 12 experienced men, and then
Yeah.
everyone else were new men. What kind of interaction did you have with men who were already there? Were there officers or sergeants who could tell you about what was going on or what had happened?
Yeah, there was a couple of officers, one of whom I became very good close friends with. He's our company commander. I was, being a second lieutenant, was a platoon leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined the guys, my men. I knew I had to be very careful because they had seen combat
Mm-hmm.
the hard way,
Right.
and I was green as they could be. So I got them together, and I said, "All right, you guys, I've learned a lot about how to be in the infantry, what we have to do and what we don't have to do. But you have been in combat,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to teach you, and you are going to teach me."
Mm-hmm.
And when I said that, they suddenly let up. I wasn't getting, I wasn't concerned about what they might, offend me or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. So I was pleased. And then of course we went into combat, and we had many instances which involved the enemy itself.
Mm-hmm. How long was it from the time when your company formed up to when you actually engaged the enemy for the first time?
I'd say maybe a week.
Okay. And had you just been marching before that, or?
Yeah, we before that it's hard to remember. I think we left in vehicles
Mm-hmm.
up to a point. Then we all disembarked the vehicles, and we marched on in from there and set up camp. And I remember after we established camp and decided what orders we were getting from the above and which we were going to go,
Mm-hmm.
I was told by my company commander to go out and do a little reconnaissance.
Right.
And I took 1 or 2 men with me. It was sort of late in the day, and it was winter time. There was a lot of snow all over the
Mm-hmm.
place. And I tell people the first shot I ever heard that was fired in anger was directly at me.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately for me, he was a lousy shot. He missed me. And I hightailed it back to company headquarters and reported to what they wanted to hear.
Right.
But that was my first encounter with the Germans.
Okay. And then, how about the first time that you actually led your platoon into combat? Do you remember anything about that?
There was one in particular that I remember. We were going down this road, advancing. There was a hill on the right, and on the left, it was farther down, and right next to the road was a Catholic shrine. You see quite a few of those over in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with another officer, and we went up to the Catholic shrine to see where the enemy was and what we were doing. And we poked our head around the thing, and all of a sudden, up on that hill, there was a machine gun nest.
Mm-hmm.
And he let loose with a few rounds, and he caught my friend, who was a first lieutenant, right in the thigh, right here.
Mm-hmm.
And he was $1 million wound because they couldn't fix it so he could fight again.
Right.
He had to go back to the state. And he was a professional soldier. In fact, he was a paratrooper before he came to join us.
Mm-hmm.
And he was madder than hell because he wanted to fight. I mean, he was
Mm-hmm.
a soldier. And when he found out he was not gonna be shipped back, he told me that he went to a fortune teller at one time, and the fortune teller said, "Don't worry about being shot. You're going to die by the blade."
Mm-hmm.
So he had no fear for guns and all that stuff. He believed his fortune teller.
Right.
Well, I don't know whether he died by the blade or not, but he got shipped back home by a bullet.
At that point, when that happens, the machine gun opens up on you. One man goes down. What then did you and your unit do?
I got mad.
Mm-hmm.
I got very angry. I went back to my men who were a little farther back, told them what happened, and I said, I'm going to get that machine gun. So I started up the hill. I remember my corporal was part of my platoon, and he's from Brooklyn. And he said, Lieutenant, just remember that almost on heroism and the better part of valor.
Mm-hmm.
Discretion
Yes.
is a better part of valor. And but I wanted to get that machine gun as well. I noticed as I went up toward the nest that the hill was convex.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as I kept going, I couldn't see him because he was just over the
Right.
hill. And then I realized that by the time I did see him, we were as close as, well, not you and me, but
Mm-hmm.
pretty darn close. I said, we got to have another solution to this thing because he could blow my head off.
Mm-hmm.
So I went back and I ordered mortars
Mm-hmm.
to bring fire down on this machine gun nest. That did the trick.
Okay. How did you communicate with the mortar crew? Did you have a
By
radio?
radio.
Okay.
By radio. And I think we killed one German, if not two,
Mm-hmm.
and then the rest surrendered. And so that was one of my earliest adventures
Mm-hmm.
into combat.
At this stage here in the campaign, were you regularly moving and attacking? Did you have periods where you just stayed in one place and didn't do very much?
It was a case of each battalion is made up of 4 companies.
Mm-hmm.
4 companies are made up of 4 platoons. And the idea was there were 3 that were inactive and 1 was in reserve.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in reserve, you didn't do too much.
Right.
You got a chance to take a shower and a few other things. And so there were times when we were in reserve, and there were times when we were right at the front fighting. One big battle we had was a funny little town, German town. The name was Greimerath. Anyway, it was at the base of this hill. As we were going down the hill, there was a lot of craters from our artillery that had been used
Mm-hmm.
prior to we got there. And all of a sudden, the Germans started firing at us with rifles through windows and doors of the buildings that we were approaching.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got down as fast as we could. And I tried to call my company commander, my radio, and the darn radio was out.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize it, but at that time he got wounded too from
Mm-hmm.
artillery coming from the Germans. So I grabbed a handful of my men and I said, follow me, we're going to go in that building. And I yelled to the rest of the guys, train your rifles on every cut and pick a window and
Mm-hmm.
door, and that, as you can see, and fire away. Keep us covered. And we went roaring in, and all the Germans, well, we captured a few, and some had taken off.
Mm-hmm.
And we went into one, it was a kitchen, and my God, there was some pork chops still on the on the stove, and there was a bottle of champagne. So I said to my guy, okay, the war stops. Right for about 10 minutes, the war stops.
Mm-hmm.
So we ate the pork chops, and then we started off again. And I went down the basement, and it's all women and children down there. They were petrified.
Mm-hmm.
I don't blame them. They were, because the German propaganda was that we were going to rape every woman that we came across. And all I could tell them, I was just looking for a German soldier. Where is wo ist der Soldat?
Mm-hmm.
And then I left, and they were probably couldn't believe it. But that was when I got a Bronze Star for that one.
Now, was this before you reached the Rhine River, so you're still in the
Yeah,
western?
that was before we hit the Rhine, yeah.
Okay. In general, what kind of condition did the German army seem to be in at that point, as far as you could tell?
Well, some were pretty good, but some were pretty shabby. I remember as we went along, we began to see dead bodies on the side of the road, and they
Mm-hmm.
were all Germans. They were not no GIs.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the Germans were just being outnumbered,
Mm-hmm.
and some fought like heck. There were the German SS group. They were
Mm-hmm.
diehards. They
Right.
won't surrender for any reason. We encountered them a couple of times. But then we got to the Rhine, and we crossed the Rhine like they came on D-Day. It was a kind of LST boat that had
Mm-hmm.
the front
Right. So landing craft.
landing craft. And then we got to the other side of the Rhine, and we crossed over and continued that way.
Were you crossing in an area where the other side had already been cleared? Or
We were in reserve at that time. We
Mhm.
encountered a few Germans, but the 3 platoons ahead of us got quite a bit of it.
So your unit was initially, or your company was making an opposed crossing then, or
Yeah.
Okay. And was this at a point when other American units were
Oh yeah.
crossing other sectors?
Yeah, to the south and to the north of us. We were trying to plan it so we could go as much together on it as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Then one story I think I should pass along was when we got over the other side, it was getting late in the day, and we were ordered to stop, to take cover, and wait until further orders before we moved out. And we were in a little tiny town, very rustic farm community.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a house, they're all built of stone and big boulders, and the walls are real thick.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it, I said, all right, man, there's a good place to get down there and take cover. So we went in this, and we decided we could go down to the basement,
Mm-hmm.
which we did. We didn't realize it because it was dark at that time. But where the front door was, this was the land, and then the land sloped off like this.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the basement to this side was the first floor to this side.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't know that. Well, anyway, we got our blankets out and all our gear and everything. When, I don't know, a couple hours later, somebody was up above was yelling, we're moving out. And I said, no, wait a minute. If we're going to move out, I get those orders directly from my company commander, not from some guy yelling up there. But I went up there and I told them, come on up and let's find out what's going on, which we did. And it was, somebody had a rumor or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just about that time, there was a big explosion in the house we just left.
Mm-hmm.
And I went down below, and there was a hole in the wall. I don't know how big it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I could see through that hole, and up on a hillside, maybe 100, 400 yards away was a German tank.
Oh.
And he had fired an 88
Mm-hmm.
missile. Those things are about big around and about that long. And it went through the outer wall and two inner walls before it stopped.
Right.
And landed on the ground inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over and I was fishing for my gear, and I had my stuff. And I put my hand on the thing, it's hotter than hell.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that was the SS that came in, and that's exactly where my head was.
Wow.
Before the guy called us to go up.
Did you know? What did you have? An unexploded shell? Was that it?
Yeah.
Or, so maybe an armor-piercing shot that didn't
It's like
blow
an
up.
armor piercing because it exploded against. I mean, the explosion was actually the bricks. I mean, the stone
Right.
being blown apart.
Mm-hmm.
But the shell itself didn't explode. In fact, after it cooled down, I thought I'd take it home for a souvenir. It was so heavy that I could go more than 1 mile with that thing, and I dropped it. But then, I think another story, there's so darn many of them, but I came across our platoon came across some bunkers that the Germans had been in fact, a very short time before,
Mm-hmm.
and they had departed, either by being shot at or just left.
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered on the floor of the bunker was a German pistol. They had a name for it called P-38, it must be because of the 38 caliber. And it was a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put that in my sack as a souvenir. When it turned out that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his secretary at that time, was a veteran of the 80th Infantry Division back in World War I.
Mm-hmm.
And he came to visit his outfit, and he wanted to know if he could take it back, a souvenir to give to the president.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, what the heck? I don't need this thing. So I offered to get my gun. But before I took it, I recorded the serial number of, the gun and sent it to my father by mail. And I'll be there. I found out later that it did go into the hands of our president. And we compared numbers. Numbers that was Stephen Early. That was the name of the secretary, Stephen Early. And he compared the numbers of the gun he had and the numbers that I wrote down.
Right.
Same numbers, same gun. And it went to Hyde Park, so it's on display at Hyde Park.
How about that?
So that was quite interesting.
Now you're talking about the German bunkers and so forth. Were those heavy concrete positions or just things they dug out?
A little of both. Actually, a little of both. There was the Siegfried line was all fortified. Excuse me. But
now, did your unit have to fight its way through the Siegfried line fortifications?
No, fortunately that was after I got there.
Okay.
Yeah, and they did it. That was all part of the bulge, I think. But then there's a lot of stories. It's hard to remember them all. I don't know how much you've got time on that. But,
yeah. What helps us a lot is sort of things that sort of characterize different sorts of things that soldiers or men in your unit went through. For instance, did you have much more interaction with civilians, or as you got farther into Germany and so forth?
Yes.
What kind of relationship or communication did you have with them?
Well, at one point, my dear friend, the company commander, went home on points.
Mm-hmm.
He had enough points to go home, and so he said, "Pete, you're company commander." I had just planned to go up on Mount Zutzpik and go do some skiing.
Mm-hmm.
I had to cancel that, so I was company commander. Well, anyways, company commander, your job was to contact the Germans as you go along.
Mm-hmm.
And soldiers, if they surrendered, fine. If they didn't, well, we had to somehow take care of them. But civilians, entirely different matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I would always work with their mayor, which they call burgomaster.
Right.
And sometimes I learned a little German when I came in to Germany. And sometimes I could communicate. Sometimes I needed an interpreter.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we mostly did that. Of course, you have to watch out for the German girls. Some of them were pretty cute.
Is this after the German surrender at this point when that kind of thing is going on, or were you doing this sort of thing even before that?
Before, and after too. But after the war, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but we occupied in Bavaria.
Mm-hmm.
And we had our camp set up, and we stayed the whole summer in Bavaria. So there was a little talk with the German civilians, but we were there, and they knew it. The one important thing is that we were headed toward Berlin,
Mm-hmm.
and we were making pretty good progress. The German army was beginning to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we found out that Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt had gotten together and changed our plans.
Right.
And they said, okay, Russian is going to take Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are not. No, that was so damn disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So we pointed us due south. And we followed our way down to through Munich, Nuremberg, Munich, and into the Austrian Alps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was there when the war ended, on May the 5th. But there was one battle that I was involved with, earned me a Silver Star.
Mm-hmm.
We came out of this one town, going across a large field into another town, and I noticed off to our right there was a tank, one of our tanks, exploding,
Mm-hmm.
fire. I could see men jumping out of the
Right.
tank. And then I looked around, where the heck was that coming from? And then right off ahead of us and off to the right a little bit was a foxhole with, I think there were 6 Germans in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were using anti-tank weapons. They're like bazookas.
Yeah, there's the Panzerschreck was the big
Yeah.
bazooka thing, and the
Yeah.
Panzerfaust was the little propelled grenade one.
Yeah, well, this one not this. I think it was bazookas. We didn't. It was happened so fast,
Mm-hmm.
and boy was I mad at that because they were shooting our guys and our tanks. So I yelled at my men. I got a grenade. Get your ass down as far as you can go, and I threw this thing as hard as I could. It landed short of the foxhole, but it was close enough. So when it went off, it caught a few Germans.
Mm-hmm.
But just before that, the reason why I really had to do it, they left their job trying to shoot the tanks and went to a machine gun,
Mm-hmm.
and I could see them turning the machine gun toward us.
Right.
I said, well, it's either them or me. That's when I let loose with a grenade,
Mm-hmm.
and I took care of. There were 6 guys, 6 Germans. I think they were already dead when I got up to the foxhole.
Mm-hmm.
But if they weren't, they were when I left. And if I hadn't done it, I think that we would have had 180 men behind me that would be in trouble.
Was it the sort of thing that would happen where if the Germans had one machine gun in the right place, the whole unit has to stop? And
Well, one machine gun can do a heck of a lot of damage.
Mhm.
I mean, they can just rake it, and there's one guy feeding the
Right.
belt with the bullets to it. I don't know overall. I don't know how much damage they could have done. And as I told you before, the only other encounter machine gun was early in the war.
mm-hmm.
And they can create some problems for us.
Aside from that one episode where there was a tank shooting into the side of the house, did you have to deal with German armor at all, or did you not see any of that?
No, I don't believe we did. We had a lot of our armor, and when we had advanced, if we were in wide open fields,
Mm-hmm.
the tanks took over because they could go fast. They were
Mhm.
well protected. But once we hit forest,
Right.
then it was our job as the
Mhm.
infantry to continue going along. But as far as German tanks, I never did get that close to one.
Mm-hmm.
Unlike a movie which I'm sure you saw, Private Ryan,
Mm-hmm.
those German tanks came damn close. No, they didn't. I didn't have that problem.
Yeah. By then, the Germans didn't have much gas.
They didn't
so
have much
it was
gas.
Very, very hard to do that.
And a lot of their stuff, their tanks and weapons were pretty well shot.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, we found out after they'd surrendered and we were in Austria that there were well over 100, if not 200,000 Germans still hiding in the mountains
Mm-hmm.
and were ready to attack us. But Hitler done himself in, and so they surrendered.
Did you have any problems after the surrender with some Germans who were refusing to surrender, or sabotage or attacks or anything
No, I
like that?
didn't. No, that was over with.
At the point when the war ended, did you have much of an understanding of some of the kinds of things the Germans had done with the concentration camps, the death camps, and that kind of thing?
You know, that's interesting. We didn't know a thing about those concentration camps at all until after the war was over with. Some of the GIs did, the way they approached, they did hit those
Right.
camps. We didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Must have gone around. We didn't. We had no idea until after the war we found out. It was ugly as hell. But,
Yeah.
I wish we had been more involved with that.
Could you describe sort of what happened to your platoon or company over the course of those last months of the war? Were you taking a lot of losses? What was morale like in the unit?
Well, the morale was excellent because we weren't hardly taking any losses at all.
Mm-hmm.
We had one bad artillery barrage shortly after this grammar thing,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a piece of shrapnel on my shoulder, and I think we had one or two guys that were killed. Other than that, I think we were very fortunate
Mhm.
because the war was coming to an end and the Germans on the run. But there were times when they were very threatening.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we used artillery a few times on them,
Mm-hmm.
and that was after this shell was invented, which was a proximity shell,
Mm-hmm.
and it would you could set it for distances above the ground,
Right.
and as it came down, it would go off at various distances. And we used that for the first time, and that was very effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me a little bit about the men in your unit? Where were they from? How old were they?
Well, my company commander, my dear friend, he came from Wisconsin. He sold shoes, but he loved to bowl. They had Wisconsin has good bowling there. He had a very good average. I think he had an average of well over 200. And a lot of my men seem to be coming from the east.
Mm-hmm.
One guy came from Brooklyn. Another guy came from the south somewheres. They're more or less all over. There's no rhyme or reason. It was just the way we got thrown together.
How old were they?
Well, a few were younger than me. Most of them were older than me. But I say, age-wise, you didn't find anybody in the. Well, I was 22,
Mm-hmm.
and I think most of my men were late teens or early 20s.
Mhm.
So.
But they're still regular military age and not, way
Oh.
too old or young or something
no,
like that.
they were military age, yeah.
Mhm.
And of course, after after the war, we finally got our orders to ship back to France, to Le Havre, where we eventually got on a boat and went home. It took a long time, though.
When you were based in Bavaria, I mean, what did the unit do at that point once the war was over?
It was still training because the Japanese War was still going on in the Pacific, and we had no idea whether we were going to be called as a unit and shipped over there or not. And some of the guys were, not in our group, some other companies and other battalions were shipped over. Fortunately, they didn't want us. And of course, I think when the bomb, they dropped the Hiroshima bomb was...
It was in August.
In August, yeah. So by that time, it was definitely over. But to keep the men busy, we trained like we normally do. And I had my crew dig a trench so we could set up a rifle range. And so we trained the men in that. But they really didn't need much training because they'd been through war.
Right.
But you got to keep them busy. That's for sure.
How much contact did you have with sort of officers and superiors farther up the chain? I mean, you knew your company commander.
Yeah.
Did you see much of anybody above that level?
Yes, above that was our battalion commander, Colonel Black. He's from Chicago. Nice guy, real nice guy. And but you know, when you get farther away, when you're in combat there, the officers, the higher the officers, the farther back they go. And but he was he came down and gave us some morale talk, good morale talks. After the war, he got married in Europe. Married probably a nurse or something like that. But I wish I'd seen him more. He gave me his pistol, German Luger, and I have that, and I got my medals over there. But and, well, even more than my daughter put together this. It's a history of me and the war, with photographs and letters I'd written mostly to my father.
Wow.
And that was just a delight to have my daughter do that. It took her a long time. But,
well, anything anybody does to preserve these. Now, did a copy of this go anywhere to be archived or?
Well, no, I don't think so. I mean, it's in our family. My brother's got a copy, and my sister. My children do.
Because one of the things that we can do with this project and so forth is if we can, get or make copies of something like this that can kind of be in the file along with the rest of it, and particularly because you've got your own photographs that are labeled so we know what they are and who they are, as well as original letters. That's the kind of thing that would work very well, goes very well into this kind of collection. So,
well,
while we're still here engaged in the interview part of things, are there other things that you remember about the wartime experience and so forth that kind of stick with you or that come back to you if you think about it?
Well, I think that most of which I've passed on. No, it's hard to remember. There's when getting back into the States, when I learned, for example, when I learned that I was being accepted to OCS, our troop was on a troop train heading due west to California to practice landings on the beach. And they came, a lieutenant and a sergeant came up to my seat on the train and said, "You were accepted to OCS." And I said, well, that's great, but we're going the wrong direction. I mean, we're heading out to Los Angeles, and Fort Benning was in Georgia. So they laughed, and they said, we can't change it right now. So I went all the way out to California and did some paperwork or something. They put me on not a troop train, but a regular train, and I trained right back to Georgia. And that was where some of our taxpayer money went.
Right. Now, at what point did you get back to the United States then?
But let me see, it was December the 12th, I think.
Okay.
I remember. We were on a boat. Got off at in New Jersey. Took a train to Camp Atterbury in Indiana, and that's where we got our discharge papers. And that's when I was able to call my wife, and she came right down, and then it was it. Oh yeah, one more little P.S. By that time I got back from the war, went to JC, which is now Grand Valley State College, which
that'd be the community college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from then I went to Ann Arbor to get my degree at the University of Michigan. And somewhere along there, I got a letter in the mail. Greetings, you're going to go to Korea, so to speak. And I couldn't believe it. I followed one more. Wasn't one more enough? Then I noticed at the bottom of the letter was, unless otherwise authorized by War Department.
Right.
You have to have 3 or more dependents. Well, I had two little girls, and my wife. And I fired that off, notarized and everything. So I got out of that one. But I don't know. That would have been, yeah.
Well, quite a few men did get called up and
Sure
did
they
have to
did,
go back
yeah.
in. What did you study when you were at Michigan?
Engineering.
Okay. And then did you go into an engineering career or into a bowling alley career? Or
I went into engineering. I got my first job I got was with a company called General Wire and Cable that make electrical cables, electrical wires. And I joined the company, well, I guess, yeah, right after I graduated in 1949, and was with them for a year. When I wanted to get back to Grand Rapids, I was out east, Perth Amboy, New Jersey, of all places. So I left and got a job in Grand Rapids. It was then called the American Boxboard Company. Now it is called Packaging Corporation. And I was with them for quite a few years as an engineer, but a packaging engineer. So then of course, when we got the bowling business, and my brother and I, and my father was still alive, we decided that this was too big just to let some manager handle it. It's got to be run by the owners. And my brother Phil and I were both owners. So we took over until we retired.
what kind of effect do you think your military experience kind of had on you, either personally or the course that you took in your life?
Well, I think it made me grow up a lot from just a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think back, and I think the most 4 important years of my life was in 42 to 46.
Mm-hmm.
42, I graduated from prep school in the Army, and finally getting out. And by the way, I mentioned that my wife and I were married when I went overseas. 9 months later, she greeted me with a little baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all during those 4 years.
Right. Now, was she living with her parents at that point, or on her own?
Yeah, she was living with her parents. And then when I came home, my father had a home all the kids grew up in, and he still owned it. So I stayed there until I went to Dartmouth.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the University of Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah, those are some great memories. Made a lot of friends, but all my Army friends have passed away now.
Mhm.
I'm not getting any younger either.
All right. Well, thank you very much
You got it.
for
You
talking
got
with
what
us.
you need?
I think that we do here.
Okay.
All right. Now.